There's nothing like being able to be surrounded in pork at all times. Belly, ready for cure. It'll be baking in 5 days. My favorite part, the pig skin itself, which will get scraped of all of its fat. It'll get boiled for about 4 hours, dehydrated, deep fried. We've got pork rinds. Same move with the rack of chops. All of this gets skinned. The fat caps get trimmed right before it gets brined. All of that extra fat goes along with the leaf lard into our soap. All of these midsections are perfect for pork rinds. They're really clean. They'll get scraped down of any of the fur that's left over from the scalding process, but makes a really good pork rind. There's your rack of chops. It's a beautiful rack. So here, this one's nice and simple. We'll ride the knife down, go right underneath the bones. Nice little pork loin. Towards the end of the year, around this time, our pigs tend to get a little fattier. It's getting cold outside, so they put on the extra weight to keep themselves warm. We don't mind. We get more soap out of it. But all our pigs are happy, and that's all that matters. All right, so for the pork shoulder, a little more difficult to skin, as it has a lot of corners. Chef will always say, if you spend a year here at Epiphany Farms as a cook and don't walk away knowing how to break down a pig, you're doing yourself a disservice. For me, it's one of my biggest draws of the company, and it's a valuable piece of information that you're not always going to be able to get access to. And pigs aren't the only thing. Rabbits, goats, we're getting into cattle, contemplating sheep. We raise all our chickens. And all of those, to be able to make every item on our menu, we have to put a knife to, break it down with the same sort of care in which we raised it. Because happy animals make happy meat, and the last thing you want to do is damage it. Hardest part is getting the bones out and making the cut look nice. Let's go in, down and around the ribs. Loosen all this up. At that point, I can go straight in and clean it up. Down around the spinal column, up and around. That's all gone. You have a piece of cartilage at the tip of a bone right here. Right here would be your copa. We're gonna take this out to use it later. Copa only lives in the shoulder. Where the shoulder is usually very tough, it's one of the muscles that gets a little bit less work in the top of the shoulder than the rest of it, therefore making it more tender. It's still an item that we either cure or braise to make sure all the connective tissue breaks down. There's the copa. I like to rub them, sear them, roast them, braise them, get into some curing at some point for charcuterie. Actually, starts like that, ends like that. This was a salt-cured copa that was dried and aged. Looks like coriander and peppercorns crusted. All these bones are super important. They all go into our stock. You can't make good food without good stock. Thankfully, we have amazing bones to be able to fortify it. Got a great shoulder. People will sometimes call them a Boston butt. There's a million names for every piece of pork. We keep it nice and simple. Ham's probably the more difficult. The bones, if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, it's a little hard to find them. So we start at the bottom, take that open. Ham is a great thing that I'll give to people who want to learn how to break down pigs so they can learn how to skin and they can learn how to debone, because majority of the hams that we use, we grind, whether it be for sausage, meatballs, steam buns, dumplings, or meatloaf at the old bank. It's one of those ones that you take your time, try and make it look nice, but at the end of the day, you're gonna cut it up and run it through a grinder. And this is where the hanging comes in handy. This skin's so nice and dried up. You can see my knife through the actual skin as you run your knife under it. You know that you're not taking off too much meat and you're not holding too much fat on there. Nice skinned ham will come around the bones. Taking off this tail piece, riding this bone all the way around. During our main production seasons, I do anywhere from 3 to 5 a week. Most of it, as soon as it's broken down, the very next day it's getting cooked and it's on someone's plate. We also store as much as we can, so for lower production times, that's when I get into things like utilizing the hocks and the shanks, some of the secondary cuts that aren't as glamorous as a giant pork chop, but take a little bit more effort to cook, a little bit more skill, and I think end up developing a better product at the end. That's the most amazing thing about pigs, is there's no waste on a pig. We waste nothing. The only thing we don't use that you would have seen me pull out was the kidney. Everything else gets used. Skin either goes to chicharrones or pork rinds, or it gets added into stock, an Italian technique to adding body into stocks and sauces where you add pig skin. The gelatin that it excretes is always very useful. The bones all go to stock, which goes into everything we cook, and also gets reduced into our jus that sauces all of our proteins. Hams are 100% utilized. Shoulders. All right, so let's see what we got. There's your pig. All of it ready to get brined and cooked. Trotter, shank, ham, loin, tenderloin, chops, ribs, belly, copa, shoulder, shank, and trotter. And bones and skin. Not a bad looking pig.